It was a Tuesday evening when everything shattered. The sky outside was a dull gray, the kind of day that seems to press down on you, making even the simplest of tasks feel heavy. I had just returned home from work, tired but looking forward to a quiet evening with my wife, Clara. She had been distant lately, her laughter less frequent, and her smiles more reserved. I brushed it off as stress from her job, but deep down I sensed something was amiss. As I walked through the door, the faint sound of a piano echoed from our living room. It was Clara's favorite piece, a haunting melody that always seemed to capture her mood. I followed the sound, my heart racing with anticipation. When I entered, I was greeted by the sight of Clara sitting at the piano, her fingers dancing over the keys. She looked beautiful, her hair cascading over her shoulders, a soft glow surrounding her. But as I approached, I noticed the phone on the coffee table screen lit up with a message. A name caught my eye, Jake Mitchell. My stomach dropped. I had heard that name before. A Broadway actor, the star of the latest hit musical. I thought nothing of it at first. Clara admired him like many do. But as I moved closer, curiosity got the better of me. I glanced at the screen and my heart plummeted. The message was explicit, too intimate to be mere fan admiration. I can't wait to see you again tonight. You make me feel alive. My breath caught in my throat and the world around me blurred. It was as if I had stepped into an alternate reality where everything I believed about my life was a lie. I stood frozen, processing the betrayal that unfolded before me. Clara, I managed to say, my voice shaky. She turned, her fingers halting on the keys. The look in her eyes shifted from surprise to guilt in an instant. I could see the realization dawning on her, the fear of being caught. It was as if time had stopped and all the moments we shared flashed before my eyes, the laughter, the love, the plans for the future. She started, but I cut her off. The pain was overwhelming, a physical ache that radiated through my chest. I felt betrayed, confused, and angry all at once. How could you do this to me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. Tears welled in her eyes, but I couldn't muster any sympathy. My heart raced, a whirlwind of emotions crashing over me. I felt like a fool, a man who had built his life on trust only to have it ripped apart. The reality of her infidelity sank in, and I was left grappling with a sense of loss that felt insurmountable. In that moment, I realized everything I thought I knew about love and loyalty was a facade. Clara had shattered the very foundation of our relationship. The pain morphed into a cold anger, and I knew that this was only the beginning. I had to know more. I had to confront her to understand how deep this betrayal ran. But more than that, I felt a growing need for retribution. The actor, Jake Mitchell, had taken something precious from me, and I couldn't let it go unpunished. As Clara stood there, her eyes pleading for understanding, I felt a shift within me. This was no longer about love, it was about vengeance. The man who had stolen my wife's affections would pay for what he had done. And as I looked into her tear-streaked face, I knew I would do whatever it took to make that happen. In the days that followed, my mind became a battlefield, a chaotic mix of emotions fighting for dominance. The initial shock of Clara's betrayal morphed into a slow-burning anger. I moved through my daily routine like a ghost, going through the motions at work while my thoughts were consumed by visions of revenge. Each time I saw Clara's face, the pain of her infidelity twisted in my gut, reminding me that our life together was now a fragile facade. I spent hours replaying the moment I discovered her betrayal, dissecting it like a crime scene. How long had it been going on? Who else knew? The questions spiraled, each one leading me deeper into a pit of despair. I loved Clara, at least I thought I did. But love felt like an illusion now, a cruel trick that had blinded me to the truth. I couldn't shake the feeling of being a fool, a man who had trusted too easily. I found myself reflecting on our relationship, the years we had spent building a life together. We had shared dreams, laughter, and intimacy, yet here I was standing on the precipice of destruction. Every memory felt tainted by her betrayal. I remembered the way she used to look at me, the warmth of her smile, and how she would curl up next to me on the couch after a long day. Now, those moments felt like cruel reminders, a mockery of what we once had. As I wrestled with my emotions, I began to think about Jake Mitchell. Thought of him infuriated me. He was a man who had everything, a successful career, adoration from fans, and now my wife. I could picture him strutting across the stage, basking in the limelight while I was left to pick up the pieces of my shattered life. It wasn't just about Clara anymore, it was about justice. I spent sleepless nights plotting my revenge. I needed to know everything about him. I started by researching Jake online, combing through articles, interviews, and social media posts. I learned about his rise to fame, his charming persona, and the women who had fallen at his feet. Each new piece of information only fueled my rage. I wanted to expose him, to show the world that he was not the perfect man everyone believed him to be. I began to connect the dots, leveraging my own network. I reached out to a friend who worked in theater, someone who had been in the industry long enough to have insights into the inner workings of Broadway. "You know Jake Mitchell, right?" I asked casually, trying to mask my intentions. "What's the scoop on him? Anything I should know?" My friend hesitated, sensing my underlying motive. "He's a talented guy, but he's got a reputation. Women throw themselves at him. It's no secret that he's a bit of a player," he said, his tone cautious. A player. The word echoed in my mind, igniting a fire within me. I felt a sense of empowerment as I uncovered more details about Jake's life. I learned about his upcoming show, a highly anticipated production that was set to open in a matter of weeks. The thought of him standing on that stage, basking in the applause while I wallowed in betrayal, was unbearable. I couldn't let that happen. The more I learned, the more ideas began to form. I started to devise a plan, one that would ensure Jake's downfall. I knew I had to act swiftly, but I also had to be strategic. I couldn't let my emotions cloud my judgment. I needed to play this game carefully, like a chess match where every move counted. The moral implications of my plan weighed heavily on me. Was I becoming the villain in this story? Was revenge worth the potential fallout? I wrestled with these thoughts, but each time I pictured Clara's face, the pain returned and my resolve hardened. This was not just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my dignity, about ensuring that Jake Mitchell would never forget the impact of his actions. I began to sketch out my plan, detailing the steps I would take to dismantle his career. I would use every connection I had, every scrap of information I could find, to ensure that he would never again grace the stage that had become his kingdom. As I sat in front of my computer, the glow of the screen illuminating my determined expression, I felt a rush of adrenaline. I was no longer the heartbroken husband. I was a man on a mission. With a newfound determination coursing through me, I plunged headfirst into my plan. The first step was to gather as much information as I could about Jake Mitchell and his upcoming show, The Heart of Broadway. It was a romantic musical that had generated considerable buzz, and the opening night was just weeks away. I knew that drawing attention to his personal life could create a storm that would overshadow his professional achievements. I started by reaching out to my friend in the theater industry. I needed to know more about Jake's reputation and any potential skeletons in his closet. "You know what they say about the theater, right?" I said, trying to sound casual. "Everyone got their secrets." He chuckled, but I could tell he was wary. "Yeah, but Jake's pretty clean cut. He's a good performer and he's got a solid fan base." "Why do you ask?" I hesitated, formulating my response. "Just curious. I've heard he's a bit of a flirt, and I wondered if there was more to him than meets the eye." "Flirt? Sure. But that's just part of the game. It's the theater, man. Everyone's a little dramatic." He replied. I could feel my frustration building. I needed something concrete, a chink in his armor that would make my revenge more effective. I decided to dig deeper. I turned to social media, where the lives of the rich and famous were often laid bare for the public to see. I combed through Jake's posts, photos, and comments, looking for anything that could serve as ammunition. One photo caught my eye, a candid shot of Jake with a group of fans, arms draped around two women, all of them laughing and seemingly intoxicated by the thrill of his presence. I zoomed in, and there it was, a glimpse of his charm, the way he captivated those around him. But more importantly, I noticed a distinct pattern. He had a habit of getting close to women, often in public settings. That's when it hit me. I could leverage this image, this persona, to my advantage. If I could gather enough evidence of his reckless behavior, perhaps I could sway public opinion against him. The theater community was small and word traveled fast. If I could make some noise, I could ruin his reputation before the curtain even lifted. I began to formulate a strategy. I would create an anonymous account on a popular theater forum where fans and industry insiders shared gossip and news. I could plant seeds of doubt about Jake's character, hinting at his flirty behavior and suggesting that he wasn't the dedicated artist everyone believed him to be. But I needed to be careful. I couldn't risk being traced back to me. I created a new email address, a new identity. I chose a name that sounded credible, someone who could easily blend into the theater community. I crafted my first post, carefully weaving together snippets of information I had collected. Have you heard about Jake Mitchell? He's known for his charm, but I've heard whispers about his late-night escapades with fans. Is he really the guy we think he is? I hit send, my heart racing. It felt like a dangerous game, but the thrill of it was intoxicating. I monitored the forum closely, watching as my post generated comments and discussions. Some fans defended Jake, but others began to question his behavior. I felt a rush of satisfaction as I realized I was starting to chip away at the perfect image he had built. As the days went by, I continued to feed information into the forum, each post more subtle than the last. I shared stories of his flirtation with fans, embellished with just enough truth to keep them believable. I could see the tide turning, the whispers growing louder. The community was beginning to take notice, and I felt a sense of control that I hadn't experienced since Clara's betrayal. But as I reveled in my success, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that crept in. Was I becoming the very thing I despised? I was a man seeking revenge, yet I was also a husband who had once loved his wife deeply. I struggled with the duality of my actions, the desire for vengeance battling against the remnants of my love for Clara. One night, as I sat in front of my computer, the glow of the screen casting shadows on my face, Clara walked into the room. She was still beautiful, but there was a distance in her eyes, a reminder of the trust that had been shattered. "David, can we talk?" she asked, her voice tentative. I looked at her, my heart clenching. I didn't want to confront the pain of our relationship, especially not when I was so deeply entrenched in my plan. "Not right now, Clara. I'm busy," I replied, my tone sharper than I intended. Her expression fell, but she nodded and turned away. I felt a pang of guilt, but it was quickly overshadowed by the anticipation of my revenge. I had a mission, and nothing would stand in my way. I was a man on the brink of a transformation, caught between love and vengeance. As I plotted Jake's downfall, I began to wonder, would this path truly bring me peace, or would it only lead to deeper scars? The days turned into a blur as I continued to execute my plan. My posts on the theater forum gained traction, and soon, whispers of Jake's alleged misbehavior spread like wildfire. Fans began sharing their own stories, some of which were dubious at best, but the collective narrative was enough to tarnish his image. I felt a surge of power as I watched his carefully crafted persona begin to crumble, but with each passing day, the weight of my actions pressed heavier on my conscience. As I became more entrenched in this dark web of revenge, I started to notice the cracks in my own life. Clara and I barely spoke, our conversations reduced to terse exchanges about household matters. I could see the hurt in her eyes, but I was too consumed by my mission to care. I felt like a ghost, haunting my own home, while my heart was set on destroying the man who had betrayed me. One evening, I received a message from my friend in the theater industry, a name I had carefully avoided using in my revenge scheme. "Hey, David. Did you hear about the drama surrounding Jake Mitchell? There are rumors swirling about him. It's getting messy," he wrote. My heart raced. I had succeeded beyond my wildest dreams, but at what cost? I replied with feigned indifference. "Yeah, I've seen a few posts. Seems like he's not as perfect as everyone thought." "Right. I wonder how this will affect the opening of his show. The press is all over it," he continued. I felt a rush of adrenaline. The opening night was just a few days away, and I was determined to ensure Jake didn't step onto that stage. I needed to escalate my efforts to make sure the media caught wind of the scandal before the show could even begin. I decided to reach out to a local journalist who covered theater news. I had met her at a few industry events, and while we weren't close, I knew she had a nose for controversy. I crafted an email, carefully crafting my words to sound legitimate. "I've heard some troubling things about Jake Mitchell and his behavior with fans. I thought you might want to look into it before the opening night of his show." I hit send, my heart pounding. I didn't know if she would take the bait, but I felt a sense of satisfaction knowing I had done everything I could to ensure Jake's downfall. The thought of him facing public scrutiny, of being humiliated in front of the very audience that adored him, filled me with a sense of vindication. As the opening night approached, I couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and dread. I had become so consumed by my desire for revenge that I had lost sight of the person I once was. I was no longer just a husband seeking justice. I was a man who was willing to destroy another's life for the sake of my own pain. The night of the premiere arrived, and I found myself packing in my apartment, my heart racing. Clara had insisted on attending the show, her excitement palpable, but I couldn't bring myself to face it. I wanted to be there to see the culmination of my efforts, but I also feared what it would do to me. Instead, I decided to watch the live stream of the performance from home, my laptop perched on the coffee table. As the clock ticked closer to showtime, I felt a knot of anxiety tighten in my stomach. Would my plan work? Would Jake be publicly humiliated, or would he somehow manage to charm his way out of this mess? The performance began, and I could see the glimmering lights of the theater, the audience's eager faces illuminated in the dark. But as the show progressed, I found myself unable to focus. My mind raced, replaying the moments leading up to this night. I thought about Clara, about the love we had shared and how it had been irrevocably changed. Then, as if on cue, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from the theater forum. Breaking news: Jake Mitchell's performance marred by allegations of misconduct. Sources claim he has a history of inappropriate behavior with fans. My heart raced as I read the comments flooding in, fans expressing shock and disappointment. I felt a surge of triumph mixed with unease. I had orchestrated this chaos, but at what cost? As the audience reacted to the news, I could only imagine the look on Clara's face. Was she feeling the same betrayal I had experienced? Or was she still enamored with the man who had caused our marriage to unravel? As the performance continued, I watched as Jake took the stage, his charisma shining through even in the face of scandal. He appeared unfazed, delivering his lines with the same confidence that had made him a star. I felt my anger boil over as I realized that despite my efforts, he was still captivating the audience. I couldn't take it anymore. I shut my laptop, the screen flickering off as I plunged into darkness. I was drowning in a sea of my own making, and I couldn't escape the reality that I was losing myself in the process. Revenge was consuming me, and I feared there would be no turning back. In that moment of despair, I realized that my quest for vengeance was not just about Jake. It was about reclaiming my own sense of self. I needed to confront Clara, to face the reality of our relationship and the choices we had both made. The path ahead was uncertain, but I knew I had to make a decision. Was I willing to continue down this road of destruction, or was it time to find a way to heal? The days following the opening night of The Heart of Broadway were a whirlwind of media frenzy and public outcry. Jake Mitchell became the center of a scandal that captivated the theater community and beyond. News outlets picked up the story, and whispers of his alleged misconduct echoed through the halls of Broadway. I watched from the sidelines, a mix of satisfaction and guilt swirling within me. I had orchestrated this downfall, but I was also left with a hollow feeling that gnawed at my insides. Clara, oblivious to my involvement, was devastated. She spent hours glued to her phone, reading the latest updates and discussing the unfolding drama with friends. I could see the disappointment etched on her face as she lamented the loss of the man she once admired. "I can't believe he would do something like this," she said one evening, her voice tinged with disbelief. "He seemed so genuine." I felt a pang of anger and sadness at her words. Did she really believe that? Or was she simply clinging to the remnants of her fantasy? I wanted to scream at her, to tell her that she had been fooled, but I held my tongue. Instead, I watched her, feeling like a ghost in my own home, haunted by the choices we had both made. The more I observed Clara's reaction, the more I realized how deeply intertwined our lives had become. I had sought revenge to reclaim my dignity, but in doing so, I had also put a chasm between us that felt insurmountable. I was no longer just the betrayed husband. I was a man who had taken a dark path, and I was unsure if I could come back from it. One night, as I sat alone in the living room, Clara joined me, her expression serious. "David, we need to talk," she said, her voice steady yet filled with apprehension. I felt my heart race, bracing myself for the conversation I had been avoiding. "About what?" I asked, trying to sound casual, but the tension in the air was palpable. "About Jake, about us," she replied, her gaze unwavering. "I know I messed up. I never meant to hurt you, but I need you to understand how I feel." I took a deep breath, my heart pounding. This was the moment I had dreaded, yet it was also the moment I knew I needed. "Clara, I don't know if I can hear you right now," I said, my voice strained. "Please just listen," she implored, her eyes filled with tears. I was confused. I got caught up in the excitement of it all. Jake was different, and I thought it was something special. But I see now that it was just a fantasy. "You're the one I love, David. You're my reality." Her words struck a chord, stirring emotions I had buried beneath layers of anger and betrayal. I wanted to believe her, to cling to the hope that we could rebuild what had been lost. But the memories of her betrayal loomed large, casting a shadow over my heart. "Clara, how can I trust you again?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "You broke that trust when you chose him over me." "I know," she said, her voice trembling. "And I can't change the past, but I want to make it right. I want to fight for us, for our marriage. I realize now what I stand to lose. I don't want to lose you." As I looked into her eyes, I saw the pain and regret mirrored in my own. The walls I had built around my heart began to crack, and I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe we could find a way to heal, but it wouldn't be easy. The road ahead would be fraught with challenges, and I knew I had to confront my own demons as well. "I'm not sure how to move forward," I admitted, my voice thick with emotion. "I've done things, horrible things. I sought revenge, Clara. I wanted to hurt him the way he hurt me. And now I'm not sure if I can forgive you or myself." Tears streamed down her face as she reached for my hand. "I don't want you to hurt anymore. I want to help you heal, to rebuild our trust. We can do this together, I know we can." The sincerity in her voice tugged at my heart. I had spent so much time plotting Jake's downfall that I had neglected the one person who truly mattered, my wife. In that moment, I realized that revenge had not brought me any peace. It had only deepened the divide between us. "I'll try," I said finally, feeling the weight of my decision settle on my shoulders. "But it's going to take time. We need to be honest with each other, and we need to work through this together." As we sat together in the dim light of our living room, I felt a sense of hope begin to blossom amidst the chaos. The journey ahead would be difficult, but for the first time since discovering Clara's infidelity, I felt that perhaps we could find our way back to each other. But even as I made this commitment, I couldn't shake the lingering doubts about Jake. The man who had disrupted our lives was still out there, and I knew that I would have to confront my feelings about him if I was ever to truly move on. As I gazed into Clara's eyes, I understood that the path to healing would require not only forgiveness, but also a reckoning with the choices I had made. I had to let go of my obsession with revenge and focus on rebuilding the love that had once brought us together. It was time to put the past behind us and forge a new future, one where trust could be rebuilt and love could flourish once again. In the weeks that followed, Clara and I embarked on a journey of healing and rediscovery. We began to communicate openly about our feelings, fears, and regrets. It was a slow process, filled with difficult conversations and raw emotions, but we both understood that it was necessary. I had to confront my own demons, the anger, the desire for revenge, and the pain of betrayal. Clara and I started attending couples therapy, a decision that felt daunting but also liberating. Each session forced us to peel back the layers of our relationship, examining the cracks that had formed and the reasons behind them. I learned to express my hurt without bitterness, while Clara worked to understand the impact of her actions on our marriage. It was challenging, yet there was an undeniable sense of progress. As I began to let go of my obsession with Jake Mitchell, I found a surprising sense of freedom. The anger that had once consumed me started to dissipate, replaced by a desire to reclaim my own life. I realized that seeking revenge had not only hurt Jake but had also jeopardized my own happiness. I had become so fixated on him that I had lost sight of what truly mattered, my relationship with Clara. One evening, as we sat on the couch together, I turned to Clara. "I've been thinking about Jake," I admitted, "and I understand now that I can't let him control my life any longer. I don't want to be that man who seeks revenge. I want to be better than that." Clara nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. "I think it's important for both of us to let go of the past. We can't change what happened, but we can choose how we respond to it." With her support, I decided to take action, not against Jake, but for myself. I reached out to my friend in the theater industry, the one who had first informed me about Jake's reputation. "I've been thinking," I said when he answered. "I want to write an article, not about Jake's scandal, but about the importance of accountability in relationships and the impact of infidelity. I think there's a conversation that needs to happen." He was intrigued. "That's an interesting angle. It's definitely a topic that resonates with many people. I'll help you get it published." As I began writing, I felt a sense of purpose take root. I poured my heart into the article, reflecting on my own experiences and the lessons I had learned. I wrote about forgiveness, the complexities of love, and the importance of rebuilding trust. I wanted to shed light on the pain of infidelity while also emphasizing the potential for growth and healing. When the article was published, I was overwhelmed by the response. People reached out to me, sharing their own stories of heartbreak and recovery. I realized that by confronting my pain and choosing to focus on healing, I had not only found my voice but had also inspired others to do the same. As for Clara and me, we continued to nurture our relationship. We took small steps, date nights, weekend getaways, and moments of vulnerability that allowed us to reconnect. Each time we faced a challenge, we leaned on the lessons we had learned in therapy, using them as building blocks to strengthen our bond. One evening, as we sat together watching the sunset from our balcony, I took Clara's hand in mine. "I'm grateful for you," I said, my voice filled with sincerity. "I know we've been through a lot, but I'm committed to making this work. I want to build a future together, one that's rooted in trust and love." Tears glistened in her eyes as she squeezed my hand. "I want that too, David. I've learned so much through this process, and I'm committed to being the partner you deserve." In that moment, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. We had faced the storm together, and while the scars of betrayal would always remain, they no longer defined us. Instead, they became a testament to our resilience, a reminder of the strength that comes from vulnerability and forgiveness. As I looked out at the horizon, I realized that life was a journey filled with ups and downs. I had been tempted by revenge, but I had chosen a different path, one of healing and growth. I understood that love was not just about the joyous moments. It was also about navigating the challenges together, emerging stronger on the other side. And as I held Clara's hand, I knew we were ready to embrace whatever the future held, side by side. The road ahead was uncertain, but we would face it together, committed to rebuilding our love and creating a life filled with trust, respect, and understanding. In the end, I learned that the greatest revenge was not in destroying another person, but in transforming my own pain into something beautiful. It was about reclaiming my life, my love, and my happiness, and that was a victory worth celebrating. This journey has taught me that while betrayal can shatter our worlds, it can also lead to profound growth and understanding. Love is a choice, a commitment to weather the storms together, and I was ready to embrace that choice with all my heart. Thank you for following my story.